let's get into the topic. We have been talking about on the show over the last couple of weeks psychopathy, and we got into all of the different characteristics of a psychopathic personality. We talked about the very, very important distinction between primary psychopathy and secondary psychopathy. Primary psychopaths are born the way they are. It is a disorder in the human genome, along with many other genetic disorders that exist in the human genome. Again, we're going to get into in future shows why the human genome has so many disorders inherently within it. And you don't see things like that in other species on this planet. We probably have more genetic anomalies in our genome than almost any other species on this planet. And there's a reason for that. And it's a controversial reason. We'll get into that on future shows. I happen to think that psychopathy is one of those disorders that has expressed in the human genome because of the underlying reasons that all of these different genetic disorders exist or have expressed. Okay, I think psychopathy is one of them. And it's a very difficult thing for people to accept, because when you're wrestling with the question of, it's hard enough to come to the acceptance that psychopathy exists in our world, that there is something as deranged and crazy as the inability to feel emotions for any human being, that you only care about yourself, your needs being met, and you could care less about any suffering that happens to any other living being. It's difficult enough to come to terms with that this condition does exist. It's even harder to come to terms with the question of why does it exist? What put this here with humanity, this condition? Why does it exist at all? And again, we're going to begin to shift slowly over into that question. I don't want to take calls on that question today. Okay, we're talking about gun control. We're talking about the inherent right to keep and bear arms. We're talking about the inherent right to defend oneself against violence. And, we can comment on this Newtown school shooting and then the subsequent gun grabs that are inevitably going to follow an event like that, because that's what the whole thing is geared to do. Pin it on the lone nut gunman and then justify gun control and gun grabs because, you don't want to see this happen to more children, do you? It's always a play on human emotion. And those who are under the most emotional mind control, who think with the emotions instead of understanding the reasons that gun ownership is so vitally important for the preservation of freedom, they'll just buy into the whole drama of it and say, guns need to be taken away from people. And again, this is because they've been so dumbed down and so indoctrinated that they have been actually turned into people who are literally retarded, completely slow in their understanding of an issue as important as this, which the founders of this country made so abundantly clear. There is no place for a misinterpretation. You literally have to be completely dumb not to understand or be able to interpret their words. Their words were so clear, so precise. They were so frugal about their words that they did not want to obfuscate the issue at all. They were so abundantly clear that it's impossible to mistranslate their words unless you have been put through the ringer of indoctrination and obfuscation through the media and the so-called educational system here in America. One hope that I have when it comes to all of this is that America has the highest gun ownership rate per capita in the world by far than any other country on the earth. Yemen is a very, very distant second. And that gives me hope That's one of the only things I take any hope in. When I look at a gun ownership map of the world, and I didn't get a chance to post that. Maybe I will post that in the image section for today's show. Again, you could always check out the images for today's show on the radio show page of What on Earth is Happening while the show is live. After the show is archived, I put that up with the podcast, with each respective podcast. The images go with each podcast on the podcasts page of whatonearthishappening.com. So the images for today were just basically a repeat of last week's images. I, of course, put the Free Your Mind 2 poster, the Why Tesla Matters event, and then I had the characteristics of psychopaths relisted. You could check those out. I won't go into them again. We reviewed that last week. And then there was the chart of what force is versus what violence is, the force versus violence dichotomy, which people really need to understand. I will review that this week. And then the Second Amendment, worded as it appears in the U.S. Constitution, and then also worded in a way that we might word it if we were writing it today in modern colloquial English, which I think makes it even more understandable and unambiguous. People need to understand that the Second Amendment was written with very specific intentions, and there is no room to interpret it at all. It is very clear and abundantly specific. And for people to think, oh, there's tons of room to interpret this, you're wrong. Simply wrong. There is no interpretation for this. The founders were very clear by what they meant, by all the terms involved in the sentence of the Second Amendment. All abundantly, over the top, specific. And we could get into, a couple of quotes a little bit later about, what they meant by specific terms in the Second Amendment. And again, this isn't just about the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment does nothing, folks. It does nothing. It's words on a piece of paper that are expressing an idea, a concept. Okay? It doesn't grant one right or take a right away. Okay? It's attempting to communicate that something should never be allowed to be done by the people. That government should never be allowed to infringe upon anyone's right, inherent, natural law right to defend themselves against violence. And that means whatever weaponry is at your disposal, period. I don't care from a stick, from a pebble, from some sand that you can throw in somebody's eyes, up to a nuclear bomb. Let's go to that level of extremity. Yes. People say, well, would you want people having each individually carrying tactical nuclear warheads? Wonderful idea. How about that? Okay, so we get the complete logical fallacies out of the way. Yes, it doesn't matter the extent of the weapon. It's about your capacity to wield it. And it's about nothing else. Meaning if you're put in harm's way, if you're put in a situation of jeopardy of life, you have an inherent right to use your capacity for force to defend your life. The end. There is no full stop, nothing after it. There is no interpretation needed or required. And that means any amount of force necessary to put down that act of violence. Period. I don't understand what people have such a hard time with about this. It's so simple, it's almost stupid how simple it is. And yet, see, it's because people's mind goes to the fear place. But what if always follows? But what if somebody gets hold of this weapon and then what will they do? Well, then if they use it in an abusive way, that's violence and other people have a right to defend themselves. So you come right back to the principle, period. Guns exist. If someone gets a hold of a gun and uses it for violence, other people with weaponry have a right to defend themselves with force. Period. You go right back to the defense principle. There's two principles that need to be understood. The non-aggression principle and the defense principle. That's it. These are principles. They're called principles because they are based in truth. And they do not take away rights. They do not usurp rights. You are not taking away someone's right who has attacked you with violence if you respond to that violence with force. Let me just say that again and be abundantly clear about this. You are never taking away someone else's rights if you respond to their violence with force. You have that right to do that. You're not taking away their right. You're not responding to violence with violence. That's impossible. If violence has been done, there already exists an inherent right to respond to it with force, to put down that act. Okay? You already have that right inherently, and it cannot be taken away by man. It doesn't matter what he writes down on a piece of paper. It doesn't matter what other people who are willing to conduct violence will go and do. The right still exists. Cops can try to take guns away from people all they want. It doesn't make a difference. You're not taking the right away. Somebody has a right to keep a gun for their defense and to brandish it if violence is being conducted against them and put a bullet in somebody to stop that violent act of aggression. You have that right. It doesn't make a difference what law is passed. Everywhere where there's gun control laws, the rights still exist in those places. It doesn't matter if it was written. Somebody can't say you no longer have this right to do this. See, people have to understand the absolute nature of rights. Rights are not relative. They can't be granted. They can't be taken away. They always exist and they are forever. Is that an extreme position? You absolutely better believe it is an extreme position. You better know that it is. It's an extremity. Truth is extreme. It is all one way. It is not black and white. There are no shades of gray involved. It's all one way. Rights are absolute. They either exist or they do not exist. No shades of gray. The right to defend oneself exists and it cannot be taken away by man. The end. That's it. You either understand that because it is a law and you accept that you are under that law. You are standing under that law. It is above you because it is natural and inherent to creation. You do not supersede or stand above that law. Either you understand it or you don't understand it. Now, if you don't understand it, it doesn't mean the right goes away. It doesn't mean that nature has suddenly been changed into something that you think that it is because you're ignorant of what it actually is. It still remains unchanged. That's why it's called a law. Because it is inherent to creation and it is immutable, meaning it cannot be changed by anyone's whims or fancies. It exists and it is inherent to creation. It is binding at all times and places, meaning there's nowhere you can go to get out of that law. There's nowhere you can go to change that law. As long as you're in the three-dimensional physical space-time continuum that we call our universe, you are bound by that law. An inherent law, inherent natural law, under inherent natural law, you have a right to defend yourself against violence. The end. And this is what people who are all for gun control laws don't understand. No man can write a law down that supersedes the laws of the universe. And yes, this is the laws of the universe. It's not man's law. This has nothing to do with man's law. Man's law cannot say, in one place, you don't have a right that exists, somehow magically exists somewhere else. So, in New York, you can't carry a handgun. I mean, imagine this. They're telling people you don't have a right to inherently defend yourself from violence. New Jersey, you can't carry a handgun. I mean, this is Nazi gun control laws, is what it is. It's Stalinist gun control laws. It's Maoist gun control laws. You know, this is Cambodian gun control laws. North Korean gun control laws. And we have the beginnings of this being implemented all over America. And fearful little punk boys and girls who are know-nothings, have never read anything in their lives, don't read books, don't ever think about right from wrong, don't ever understand morality. don't understand what inherent natural law rights are, give their support to the government that wants to continue to infringe upon the natural inherent right to defend oneself. It's disgusting. These people are disgusting. It's like they're not even people. They're some kind of dumb, degraded, retarded animal who have no idea what a right is and what a right is not. They think it's all relative and based upon what some psychopath in a particular area, calling themselves a politician, what their whims are, that somehow right and wrong can magically be changed. They ought to be ashamed of themselves for even thinking that way. It's sickening. It makes me sick. It makes me angry. This is another thing I want to talk about. This New Age bunk, New Age movement wants to tell everybody you should never get angry about anything. Oh, anger, that means you're not exercising true self-control. No, folks, there is such a thing as righteous anger. When you see things that are being done, that are being conducted and orchestrated to take away your rights, if you're not angry, there's something wrong with you. You've been degraded in some way. You're not a full human. You're not expressing the full range of human emotions, which includes the so-called negative emotions. You should hate what's being done in the world today. You should be angry about it. Anger gets you up to the place of consciousness, of being able to see the difference between truth and falsehood. Anger is one of the levels of consciousness that takes people up above to a higher level of consciousness. It can, if used properly, if felt when it's supposed to be felt and not suppressed, can take people up to a higher level of awareness. I'm not suggesting you just simply stay angry. And I wrestle with that because the condition is perpetually so bad. I feel myself constantly being angry many times. But the anger should be transmuted. It should be channeled. Okay, so you can hear the anger in my voice. Anger should be there. If you're paying attention, if you're really paying attention to what's going on in the world, folks, and you're not angry, there's something wrong with you. So get over this complete bunk, bull notion that there's never a time to experience anger that the New Age movement wants to sell you. This is all to get you to lay down. That's all it is. It's all to get you to lay down so you won't take any action, so you won't do anything, and so you'll accept your slavery. If you're not angry, you're going to accept your slavery. Use the anger to spur you on to a higher level of awareness and help you to understand what you should be doing, should be advocating. And we need to come together and speak out forcefully against this grab that is going to be going on and is going to be pushed harder and harder as they do more of these orchestrated events, these total human sacrifice rituals. And if you don't think this was another one of them, the footprints are all over it, folks. All over it. The fingerprints of this being a false flag event that just happened in Connecticut, in this new town, okay, by this so-called lone nutter gunman. If you don't understand that this is an orchestration and it's being used to justify the continual erosion of people's inherent human rights to defend themselves, because they want to take away the ability to defend yourself against tyrannical government. That's what guns are for. The ancillary thing that weapons are for, meaning the secondary usage of them, ancillary, secondary usage, or secondary reason, is self-defense on the street against other citizens or self-defense in your home against intruders into your home. Those are ancillary. And then for people that, believe in the violence and aggression ideology, hunting, which I don't think is really a right. I think you're just taking animals' rights as a result of doing that. You're going and, engaging in violence against other beings, not human beings, and somehow people think that's acceptable and should, continue to be engaged in and practiced. That will set off a whole nother round of controversy, but, go back and listen to the podcast I did on carnism. If you don't think that what we're doing to the animal kingdom is being done to us. It's one of the reasons that all of this whole prison continues to perpetuate itself, called the earth. The conditions that we're experiencing on the earth, one of the main driving causal factors is what we do to animals. If you don't want to understand that, you're also completely ignorant. That the correspondence principle, the principle of correspondence, which is one of the expressions of natural law, is actually going to work when we do violence to animals, and it's going to rearrange the field energy that we exist in, and it's going to ensure that ultimately violence is done to humanity, which it is being done to us every single day. Until we understand we can't do that to our animal brothers and sisters and expect it not to be done to us, we're not going to make any progress. But again, I'm not here to, that's not the topic of discussion here today. I'm talking about what gun rights are inherently exist for. The right to own and brandish a weapon against an attacker is an inherent right. And an ancillary usage or an ancillary reason for owning guns is hunting, home defense, and self-defense when walking in open territory. Those are ancillary usages of weaponry in general. The primary usage of weaponry is to defend your freedom from the encroachments of tyrannical government. And get that through your thick skulls out there, people. That's the primary usage of weaponry. To stop encroachment against your inherent freedom, against your inherent rights as an individual by government, regardless of what form that takes. And you can look up tons of examples of what form it takes. Meaning how government goes and encroaches upon people's rights and ultimately wages genocide against them once they get them disarmed. Time and time and time and time again. Whether the dictator's name is Pol Pot or Joseph Stalin or Adolf Hitler or Genghis Khan or Julius Caesar, guaranteed they're going to go and try to disarm the people that they want to conquer. And they're going to tell them, you can't have weapons. We can have them, but you can't have them. The people who conduct the violence are going to tell people who aren't being violent, you can't have weapons. You can't have guns. We can have them. We're the authorities. We're allowed, but you're not. And this is just, no clearer example can be made of the acceptance of human slavery. That's all it is. You could color it up, you could dress it up, you could tie a nice bow tie on it, make it look pretty, but all it is, no matter how you gift wrap it, is the acceptance that someone else is your ruler and you are their slave. That's what the acceptance of all gun control laws are. And it's deplorable. Totally deplorable. The nerve that other people actually accept, I'm a slave. Meaning themselves, they accept in their own mind that they're a slave to someone else and someone else is their authority that may command them what they can do. What kind of weapon they may own. I mean, it's just such a foreign idea to me. It's so unimaginable. Let me tell you something. I never thought that way when I was the darkest occult Satanist, that you could have imagined. I still didn't think that way. That's why I don't even know where this is coming from. It's so unfathomable to me that I can't even grasp what kind of degraded mind state you need to be. And believe me, I was in the past in a degraded mind state in my worldview. I'll be the first to admit it openly when I was involved in the dark occult. But I never had that mind state. Never. I mean, I have no idea where that comes from. I guess it's because my mind state was inherently more, earlier in my life was just more imbalanced toward the left brain hemisphere. And the left brain, when it goes chronically dominant, the personality becomes more dominator, wanting to dominate other people. So I never took the slave mentality. I went into the left-hand path of imbalance, but never the right-hand path of imbalance, where I was okay with other people ruling me, telling me what I can and can't do as long as I'm harming no one else, and telling me that they're my authority and therefore I'm their slave to be ruled over. That they have some kind of moral right to rule over me, and I have some kind of moral right to obey their whims and commands. I mean, that's so alien and foreign to me, I can't even conceive of where that comes from. The only place that I can tell you that comes from is self-loathing, folks. You have to hate yourself to think that way. You have to absolutely hate who you are to think that way. You have to be totally ruled by the emotions, never understand that there's a time to defend oneself from violence, and you have to be willing to say, go ahead and do whatever violence you will to me, I won't lift a finger to defend myself, which is called a total coward. That's what someone like that is, a total coward. And if you're a total coward, that means you hate yourself. Because you couldn't love yourself if you're a coward. You would never stand up for yourself and defend yourself if you're a coward. You would just lay down and let people run roughshod all over you. Do whatever they want to you. It has to come, if you just think about it, just from a psychological standpoint, that level of that mind state has to come. It must come from self-loathing being present within the individual's psyche. It has to come from a place of self-hatred. If you truly love yourself, you understand what freedom is, you love those who you value in your life, your friends, family, spouse, children, etc., you're going to be willing to stand up and defend yourself, viciously if necessary, if you're attacked. And this is what people are daring to come out and say needs to be forcefully taken away from people? Really? You're going to take away my inherent right to defend myself against violence? I don't think so. Not while I draw breath. What gives you the right? Where does that right come from in your diseased mind? Not in this lifetime. Hear the anger and know it comes from a righteous place. If that turns you off, then shut the radio off right now. Don't listen to it if it turns you off. If you're some meek, timid coward that is never going to stand up for your rights and defend yourself against violence, then none of us want your help or need it. Okay? We could go to the quote of Samuel Adams, a brilliant philosopher who truly understood the inherent right to self-defense, one of the founders of this country, one of the people who, because of his courage, helped to foment the American Revolution. Which, if it didn't occur, believe me, things would be 100 times worse. You want to look at where things are headed, folks? I'll tell you where things are headed. Go watch a documentary about North Korea. That's where things are headed. That's the human future. A state exists right now that is arguably 100 times worse than Nazi Germany ever was. You want to take a look at that regime? Go look at it. And know that's coming to America if we don't turn our mindset around and understand what real freedom is. That's going to come to this country sooner than anybody realizes. When Samuel Adams was talking to people about needing to set aside their own personal desires to come together and fight for the common cause of human freedom in the American Revolution, he was trying to explain to people that you can't love your life more than you love freedom. If you love your life more than you love your freedom, you're ultimately a coward. If you love your job, keeping your job more than you love freedom, you're a coward. If you love comfort in your slavery more than you love freedom, then you're a coward. And, I mean, it's like we don't even barely have anyone today that really understands this to this level or can put it in such eloquent ways. It's like something has been lost from humanity. You know, I'll read this quote from Adams. And he's the person who I quoted for the Free Your Mind 2 event. That's, last year I quoted from Jefferson and put that at the bottom, the footer of the page, and, on the program for the Free Your Mind 2 event, about that, Thomas Jefferson said, "I swear upon the altar of God, eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man." A quote about mind control. He understood you have to control the mind to control the body. You have to control the mind to take away people's inherent freedom, get them willing to give it up. This year I quoted Samuel Adams about natural law. The natural liberty of man is to be free from any superior power on earth and not to be under the will or legislative authority of man, but only to have the law of nature for his rule. That's it. Natural law. That's all there is. He understood there is no such thing as the authority of man. There's no such thing as the rule of man being an authority on earth. That true freedom is only to have the law of nature for one's rule. Natural law. The founders understood this. Adams understood natural law perhaps better than anyone. I mean, maybe with the acceptance of Thomas Paine, who I feel had a grasp on it to a very, very high level. Here's a quote by Adams. He said, "If you love wealth greater than liberty, the tranquility of servitude, more than the animating contest for freedom, then go forth from us in peace. We seek not your counsel nor your arms. Crouch down and lick the hand that feeds you. May your chains set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you are our countrymen." If you're not willing to defend your freedom with force if necessary, you're a coward, and the people who really understand freedom don't want or need your support or help. That's what he was saying to them. When they were responding for a call to arms to fight against invading attackers against America, they wanted to take their inherent rights away. They were saying, if we lose, the crown might take my business away. Imagine. That's what they were concerned about. Instead of the freedom for themselves and future generations. So we're going to open up the phone lines in hour 2. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break. We'll be right back. You're listening to What on Earth is Happening?